Inflation has become a major concern since the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted economies worldwide. With sudden changes in supply chains, consumer habits, and global markets, prices have risen sharply, affecting our daily expenses. One of the key tools for measuring inflation is the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, CPI-U. This index tracks how much people in the United States are spending on goods and services. It helps us understand how consumer spending is changing and gives us a snapshot of the economy's health. The CPI-U data shows just how much the pandemic has affected our financial landscape, revealing both immediate impacts and longer-term trends. In this video, we examine how inflation has progressed since early 2020. We'll highlight key areas where prices have risen, look at the factors behind these increases, and provide a clearer understanding of the pandemic's economic impact. Check out the full details by visiting the link in the description. Overview of inflation since the pandemic. Consumer prices have risen by 21.4% since the pandemic-induced recession began in February 2020, according to a Bankrate analysis. While some costs have stabilized recently, only about 6% of the nearly 400 items tracked by the Bureau of Labor Statistics are less expensive today. Inflation peaked in June 2022 at almost 9%, reflecting the economic strain caused by the pandemic's disruptions. By September 2024, prices were 2.4% higher than a year earlier, signaling a gradual return to stability. These numbers emphasize how deeply the pandemic has shaped spending patterns and economic recovery efforts. Looking at inflation's historical context helps us understand its current challenges and what it means for the future. Computation of price increases. This analysis uses data from the CPI-U, which is regularly updated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. To understand how prices have changed, we compared figures from February 2020, when the pandemic's economic effects began, to data from October 2024. This breakdown helps clarify the scale of these changes, making it easier to see how different sectors have been affected. Each category reflects the unique pressures it faced during a challenging period, showing the broad impact of the pandemic on everyday expenses. We look at specific items from the CPI-U basket that have seen significant price increases since the pandemic started. Number 1. Food at home. The price of food at home has risen by 26.3% since February 2020, with the index climbing from 244.054 to 308.2. This significant increase reflects changes in consumer behavior as more people shifted to home-cooked meals during the pandemic. Supply chain disruptions played a major role, causing delays and shortages that pushed up costs. Increased demand for staples and perishable goods further added to the pressure. These combined factors led to notable price hikes across grocery aisles. To understand this rise better, we will break it down into specific categories like cereals, meats, dairy, and more. Number 2. Cereals and bakery products. Cereals and bakery products have seen a price surge of 29.7%, with their index increasing from 276.641 to 359.007. This rise is largely due to higher global wheat prices caused by production challenges and supply chain issues. Labor shortages in food production and transportation also made it harder to meet growing consumer demand. At the same time, logistical bottlenecks raised costs for manufacturers and retailers. As these items form an important part of diets, their rising costs affected families' grocery bills significantly. Number 3. Meats, poultry, fish, and eggs. Prices for meats, poultry, fish, and eggs jumped by 29.7%, with the index moving from 253.396 to 328.743. Labor shortages in processing plants and higher feed costs were key contributors to this sharp increase. The pandemic disrupted supply chains, limiting the availability of these products and driving prices upward. Rising demand during lockdowns further intensified the situation as consumers stocked up on protein-rich foods. For many households, these essential protein sources became more expensive, affecting meal planning and spending habits. Number 4. On our list of products you're paying more is dairy and related products. The cost of dairy products rose by 21.0%, with their index increasing from 224.443 to 271.695. Supply chain disruptions and higher production costs, including labor and feed expenses, played a major role in driving these prices up. Dairy producers faced additional challenges in meeting consumer demand as eating habits shifted during the pandemic. Rising energy and transportation costs added to the financial strain, making items like milk, cheese, and yogurt more expensive. These changes reflect how even staple food categories were not spared from the pandemic's impact. Number 5. Fruits and vegetables. The price index for fruits and vegetables rose by 18.5%, increasing from 299.817 to 355.292. Adverse weather conditions affecting crop yields and rising transportation costs contributed significantly to this rise. As supply chains struggled to recover, fresh produce availability became more limited, pushing up prices. Higher demand for nutritious options during the pandemic also influenced these changes, as many consumers sought healthier diets. Despite these challenges, fruits and vegetables remained staples in many diets, leading consumers to adjust spending to accommodate higher costs. Number 6. Non-alcoholic beverages. Non-alcoholic beverages experienced a price increase of 27.4%, with their index rising from 173.194 to 220.672. Supply chain issues, including delays in sourcing ingredients and packaging materials, were major factors in this surge. The pandemic created additional costs for manufacturers, which were passed on to consumers. Increased demand for drinks like coffee, tea, and juices during lockdowns also played a role. These dynamics illustrate how disruptions in production and logistics affected beverage pricing. Number 7. Alcoholic beverages. Prices for alcoholic beverages increased by 14.9%, with the index climbing from 254.831 to 292.871. Changes in consumer behavior during the pandemic, including increased demand for home consumption, were a major factor in this rise. Supply chain issues and rising production costs also played a role, affecting everything from sourcing ingredients to distributing products. The shift toward at-home celebrations and social activities highlighted how the beverage industry adapted to meet changing consumer needs. These factors combined to make alcoholic beverages a more expensive part of many households' budgets. Number 8 on our list of products you're paying more is food away from home. Dining out became notably more expensive, with food away from home prices increasing by 28.6%, as the index rose from 289.781 to 372.486. Restaurants faced higher costs for ingredients, compounded by staffing shortages that emerged during recovery efforts. Many establishments also had to adapt to new safety protocols, which further raised operational expenses. The growing popularity of food delivery services also added to pricing pressures as convenience fees became standard. Eating outside the home became a significant financial decision for many families during this time. Number 9. Gasoline, all types. Gasoline prices saw a sharp rise of 28.9%, with the index increasing from 218.373 to 281.741. Global oil supply disruptions, partly due to geopolitical tensions, significantly influenced this price hike. As economies reopened, demand for fuel surged, further driving up costs. The recovery of transportation and logistics sectors also contributed to the rising prices, as fuel is a key operational expense. This increase had a ripple effect across industries and directly impacted household transportation costs. Number 10. Electricity. Electricity prices surged by 32.2%, with the index climbing from 212.180 to 280.470. Increased demand during extreme weather events and higher fuel costs heavily influenced this rise. The pandemic disrupted supply chains for critical energy infrastructure, further adding to costs. These price increases placed a heavy burden on households, as electricity is an essential service for daily living. Businesses also faced higher operational expenses, leading to broader economic impacts. Before we continue with the video, take a quick moment to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Plus, we've got some helpful resources in the description. Check them out and share your comments after you're done watching. Number 11. Utility piped gas service. Utility gas service costs rose by 32.6%, with the index increasing from 171.469 to 227.463. Rising demand for natural gas during colder months and higher production costs were key drivers of this increase. Supply shortages and delayed infrastructure projects further contributed to the rise in prices. As many households depended on piped gas for heating and cooking, this increase became a noticeable strain on budgets. These factors highlight the challenges faced by energy providers in meeting consumer needs during the pandemic. Number 12, on our list of products you're paying more is apparel. Apparel prices increased modestly by 7.0%, with the index rising from 124.438 to 133.179. While this is a smaller jump compared to other categories, supply chain issues still disrupted the availability of clothing. Factories faced production delays, and shipping bottlenecks made it harder for retailers to restock shelves. At the same time, fluctuating demand added complexity, with periods of reduced sales during lockdowns, followed by a surge in consumer interest as restrictions eased. These factors combined to create steady, though less dramatic, price increases in the apparel market. Number 13. New vehicles. New vehicle prices rose by 19.8%, as the index climbed from 147.803 to 177.162. The global semiconductor shortage played a major role in limiting production, delaying deliveries, and reducing inventory. Automakers faced rising costs for raw materials, which were passed on to buyers. Strong consumer demand for new vehicles, particularly as travel restrictions lifted, further pushed prices upward. These challenges reshaped the automotive market, making it more expensive for consumers to purchase new cars. Number 14. Used cars and trucks. The used car market saw a dramatic price increase of 30.1%, with the index rising from 137.452 to 178.744. High demand for vehicles during the pandemic, coupled with limited new car availability, drove up prices in this sector. Supply chain disruptions slowed the flow of new inventory, forcing many buyers to turn to used options. Dealers experienced record low inventories, which only heightened competition and increased costs. This sharp rise reflects how supply shortages and strong demand converged to reshape the used car market. Number 15. Medical care commodities. Medical care commodities saw a price increase of 7.3%, with the index moving from 384.701 to 412.914. Ongoing demand for healthcare supplies and medications during the pandemic contributed to this rise. Supply chain delays and increased manufacturing costs added to pricing pressures, particularly for essential items. These changes reflect the challenges faced by the healthcare sector in meeting rising consumer needs during a period of heightened demand. While the increase is smaller than in other categories, it has been significant for those managing chronic health conditions or requiring regular care. Number 16. On our list of products you're paying more is tobacco products. Tobacco products experienced a significant price increase of 37.0%, with the index jumping from 1,148.752 to 1,571.120. Changes in taxation policies and market dynamics were key drivers of this rise. Supply chain disruptions also affected production and distribution, further pushing prices upward. Increased demand for tobacco products during the pandemic, as people coped with stress and lifestyle changes, added to the pricing pressures. This substantial increase underscores the impact of economic shifts on heavily taxed and regulated goods like tobacco. Number 17. Housing. Shelter costs rose by 25.0%, with the index increasing from 324.254 to 405.287. A combination of low housing inventory and high demand contributed to this substantial rise. Many people sought more spacious homes during the pandemic, further intensifying competition in the housing market. Construction delays and rising costs for building materials also played a role, limiting new housing supply. These factors created a challenging environment for renters and buyers, making housing a major driver of inflation during this period. Number 18. Rent of primary residence. Rent prices increased by 25.6%, with the index climbing from 338.616 to 425.381. Urban areas, in particular, experienced strong demand as people returned to cities post-lockdown. Limited availability of rental units, coupled with rising property maintenance costs, drove prices higher. Landlords also adjusted rents to reflect inflation and changes in market conditions. These shifts made renting a more expensive option for many households, particularly those in high-demand areas. Number 19. Medical care services. Medical care services experienced an 11.0% price increase, with the index rising from 555.597 to 617.753. The ongoing strain on healthcare facilities during the pandemic drove operational costs higher, including labor and equipment expenses. Increased demand for medical services, both for COVID-19 care and other health needs, added to these pressures. These rising costs were reflected in healthcare pricing, affecting patients and providers alike. Last on our list of products you're paying more is transportation services. Transportation services saw a sharp price increase of 34.0%, with the index climbing from 327.466 to 440.755. Rising fuel costs and surging demand for logistics and travel services were key contributors to this rise. The pandemic disrupted supply chains, causing delays and higher operational expenses for transportation providers. As restrictions eased, demand for public transportation, ride-sharing, and air travel rebounded strongly, further driving up prices. These trends illustrate how transportation costs became a significant factor in overall inflation. The pandemic reshaped the economic landscape, leaving a lasting impact on the prices of goods and services. Inflation affected nearly every part of daily life, including food, energy, housing, and transportation. These changes show how supply chain disruptions, increased demand, and rising production costs are connected. Understanding these trends helps us see how they impact households and industries. Looking ahead, the lessons learned during this time will help us deal with future economic challenges and prepare for changes in consumer needs and market conditions. Thanks for watching, and if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Also, don't forget the link in the description.